So hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us for this, our first pre-orientation webinar of 2023. My name is Jamani Dunn, and I'm the Assistant Registrar within the Admissions and International Office here at the UWI Mona, and I'll be serving as your host for this webinar. Now, I'd like to start by first congratulating you all on being offered a place to study here at the University of the West Indies, Mona. The UWI is the Caribbean's premier higher education institution and is internationally ranked as one of the best universities in the world. Now, this university has produced many of the regions and the globe's leaders and thinkers. And so by being accepted to study here, it indicates that you are among your country's best and brightest. I'd also like to salute you for choosing to study abroad. By doing so, you've demonstrated your willingness to step outside of your comfort zone and push yourself that much further to achieve excellence and realize your dreams. Now, I have no doubt that this experience will be one of the most meaningful and rewarding in your life. However, of course, along this journey, you'll be confronted with your fair share of challenges and obstacles. How well you handle your stay abroad and the challenges that you may face will depend a great deal on how well you've prepared for your journey. And that's where we come in. You're not alone. This orientation program, including this webinar, is designed to help guide you in preparing for all that lies ahead. This is one in a series that we'll be hosting over the next few weeks. Each one will explore different topics that will be relevant to the regional and international student experience. The orientation program will, of course, culminate in the big in-person orientation for regional and international students on Tuesday, August 22 here at the Mona campus. So we look forward to seeing you then. But before I go further, I'll just pause to introduce my co-pilot for today's session, Ms. Vikisha Allen. Vikisha, you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Pelican family.
Excellent. And Vikisha Allen is our administrative secretary and the medical elective coordinator here. And so she'll be a member of the team that will be supporting you. I share apologies on behalf of our head of department, that's Dr. Marsha Morgan Allen, and other members of the team who are unavoidably absent. But we at the international office are one of the key teams that will be supporting you while you study here at the University of the West Indies, Mona. So if there are any questions or concerns that you have, don't hesitate to reach out. Now for this webinar, we also have two extra special guests. We will be joined by Athol Hamilton, Student Services and Development Manager for Taylor Hall. And we will also be joined by Abraham Alexander, who is a current final year international student. So we welcome them and look forward to hearing from them a bit later. Now, with that being said, let's turn to the topic of today's webinar, pre-arrival preparation, immigration, accommodation, and next steps. So what we've done, we've broken today's proceedings into three main segments. In segment one, we will have a discussion on accommodation with Athol Hamilton. And we know that you have burning questions about accommodation and the halls of residence, so we'll explore those during that segment. In segment two, we will have a recorded presentation on immigration from Herman Terrell. And so, any questions that you have on the extension of stay process, we'll provide guidance on travel and so on. So you'll get that information during that segment. And finally, in segment three, we will hear from a current international student, Abraham Alexander, who will share a little bit about his perspective on life here at Mona and give you a few useful tips about settling in. And of course, we want to hear from you. So, we'll be taking your questions at the end of each of the segments so that we can ventilate those topics as much as possible. But before we jump in, just a few points of housekeeping for this webinar. So we'd ask that you keep your mics muted during the presentations. We encourage you to, of course, share your questions via the chat at any point. if you wish to pose a question verbally during the Q&A segments at the end of each of the segments, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature. And then when called upon, unmute yourself and then pose your question then. If we are, for whatever reason, unable to answer your question or take your question during this webinar, we will do our best to share responses with you after the session. We also have a very brief survey at the end of the session, which will just capture your feedback. So we encourage you to just spend a little bit of time just to fill that out for us. Now, before we go into the first segment, we want to learn a little more about you. So we have a brief poll to share, and I invite Ms. Vikisha Allen to introduce the poll and to engage with you for a little bit. Vikisha?
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. So we know that we have persons from different countries coming to Jamaica. This may be some of you first time traveling, or some of you may have a wealth of experience. So we're going to post the poll to capture that.
All right, so the poll is now launched.
All right, so the first question that we have is, have you traveled overseas before? Now you can go ahead and submit your response. And also, how do you feel about living away from your family and friends? I know that one is kind of tricky. And also, how prepared do you feel for your study abroad experience? All right.
All right. So we're seeing the responses coming in.
Okay. All right, so in the meantime, while you are responding to the poll, we want to get to know you a little better. So what I'm going to do, maybe pick on a few persons, or you can raise your hand. And for me, you can name something or someone from your country that has made your country famous. So someone or something that has made your country famous. So you can raise your hand, or I will randomly choose persons and you can open your mic and video.
Any volunteers?
All right, so I'm going to choose someone, Miss.
I saw a hand just now.
Okay. Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. So remember, don't tell us the name of your country, just tell us the person or thing that has made your country famous, and you can do a brief little introduction of yourself.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Hearing you loud and clear.
Yes, we're hearing you clear.
Hi, I'm Miss Shalay Dowlin. I'm 19 years old. I'm going to be studying psychology at UWI Mona. And the person who made my country famous is Letitia Wright, or the new Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Ah, interesting.
Okay, so I'm not sure which country is that, but it sounds Caribbean. Am I right?
Yes, it's Guyana.
Okay, Guyana. Okay, nice. So we'll take a few more. I was calling out to Carissa Humphrey.
I can't put, are you hearing? I can't put my camera on right now. I hope y'all are hearing me.
That's okay, we can hear you.
Okay, so my name is Carissa Humphrey. I'll be studying medicine at UWI Mona this year. And the person that made my country famous is Wendy Fitzwilliam.
Excellent.
You said Wendy Fitzwilliams?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, nice. So we have a nice blend of Caribbean persons. Anyone outside of the Caribbean want to share with us?
I see a hand. I see Sharai Loon.
Okay, go ahead, Sharai.
Hello, are you guys hearing me?
Hearing you
Yes,
loud
we're
and
hearing
clear.
you.
Okay, my name is Shari Lan. The person that made my country famous is Shawnee Miller.
Bahamas.
Yes.
Yes. I'm a sports person, so that one. Okay, Auntie
Fantastic.
Jessa. Yeah, that's very nice. Very nice. She just expanded her family recently. Okay. Anyone else? Just a few more minutes to go. Anyone else? Okay, Tamika. Go ahead, Tamika.
Hello, I'm Tamika, I'm 18, and a person who made my country famous would be, for example, Charles de Gaulle.
Say again.
Charles de Gaulle,
Okay, I'm not so familiar with that person. What about
And
you,
neither am
Vikisha?
I. No, I'm not.
Oh,
No,
that's a
I'm
tricky
not.
one. I wonder if any of the other students know who that might be and where she might be from.
or maybe something like bread and cheese.
That's another hint.
So
Yeah.
it's a food that the person made?
No, it did not make it, but it's very famous. Like it's very representative of our way of living.
I'm
Ah,
gonna say
w-
Italy.
we're seeing some responses in the chat from students, and some of them are saying that you sound French. But
Yeah,
is
it's
that
French.
It's
there we go.
right, nice.
There you
Nice,
go. Congrats,
nice.
guys. Good
Yes,
guess.
yes. Right.
Right. So I think we have most of our poll results back. So I'm going to end the poll. And I'm going to share the results, and you can just read the results, Vikisha.
Okay. So we have quite a few persons who have traveled before. That's nice. And quite a few persons who are a little bit anxious about leaving their family and friends, which is expected. And how prepared do you feel for your study experience? And majority of persons said they're somewhat prepared. So this session will help you get up to where you need to be for those who were not very prepared. Right, so thank you guys for participating. Back over to you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you very much, Vikisha. Right, so now we move into our first segment of the webinar. We'll be talking about accommodation. So I welcome Athol Hamilton to join me for a discussion on the halls of residence and many of the policies and procedures that govern life on hall at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Welcome, Athol.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Welcome to our new students.
Fantastic. So just to start, tell us a little bit about the halls of residence at the University of the West Indies. For example, how many halls do we have here? And what's the approximate total capacity for on-campus accommodation?
Okay, great. So we currently house approximately 5,000 students living on campus at full capacity. We have a range of housing options for our students. So we have 10 halls of residence on the Mona campus. 9 of the 10 primarily cater to undergraduate students, and we have one facility that is for our graduate students. That's a Marlene Hamilton Hall. And among the undergraduate halls, the costs vary and the living arrangements vary. So depending on the kind of experience that the student wants and also what they can afford, there's a range of housing options. And final thing I'll add to that is we have a public-private partnership arrangement with an entity called 138 Student Living. They operate 3 halls of residence on the Mona campus: Georgia Lane Hall, Leslie Robinson Hall, and Irving Hall. So students have the option of residing in those facilities. And then we have a small facility at the Western Jamaica campus that's in Montego Bay. So if there's any student here who will be studying in Montego Bay, there's also a facility there that houses our students.
Okay, fantastic. So it sounds like there are a plethora of options for students and more than enough room. Thank you. I'm hopeful that everyone has already done so, but how do students apply for on-campus accommodation? Like, what's the application process like?
Right, so that's a great question. Students can go online and click on our housing option. And once that comes up, they will see all of the halls of residence that are available to them. And you fill out an online form and click submit. And we get that information and process the students accordingly. Now, if students, and I know sometimes students have follow-up questions, or they might want to check on the status of their housing application, they could send us an email, and that email address is student, student, housing, housing, at uwimona.edu.jm. So maybe we could drop that in the chat for the benefit of our students as well. So it's student housing at UWI, and we will respond to your query or follow up with your hall that you have selected in the event you have not heard anything.
Okay, excellent. And I suppose it's the same number if they, for example, hear that their hall of choice is unavailable.
Right. So we actually receive more requests than available beds, and so when one hall is full, what we tend to do is to reroute the application to where there is available housing. So although the student, when they apply, will see, okay, your first option, there's a second and third option. If those halls do not have spaces available, then we will redirect to where there is available housing, because while we try to place all our students in the hall of choice, sometimes some halls, based on the size, based on the affordability, those rooms are taken up very quickly. And then we will have to look to see where there's available spaces to place our students.
Okay, fantastic. Generally speaking, there are provisions, special provisions made for international students, correct?
Right. So regional and international students have very high priority in terms of being placed on campus. So I would say almost in all cases, we are able to offer the student a room on campus. It may not be the ideal room that you want in terms of room type, but we work very hard to make sure that our regional and international students are on campus, because we know that that helps them to settle more quickly and to adjust to the new environment. So usually once you are coming from outside of Jamaica to study and you need accommodation on campus, you are given very high priority.
Excellent. Now, I know that there are many students who are in the process of making their plans. Many have already made their plans to arrive in Jamaica. But what is the official move-in date for regional and international students?
All right, very good question. So we, the official move-in date is on Friday, August 18, 2023. That is aligned so that students can be admitted in time for the regional and international students orientation. But we know that with global travel, sometimes you are not able to get a ticket for the ideal date that you want to travel. And so there is some flexibility that we exercise in admitting regional and international students. So they could arrive earlier than the 18th. The caveat though is that they would need to pay for those days the early days that they arrive. So let us say you arrive 3 days before the 18th of August, then you will be required to pay for those days. The days during the official orientation period, the students would not be charged. There is a provision to house them for that period of orientation. I also want to add very quickly that we are making arrangements to pick up our students who are arriving during the official period at the Norman Manley International Airport. It is therefore very important that once the student has booked their ticket, they should email that travel itinerary to lodgings, LODGINGS .OSSD at uwimona.edu.jm. That's lodgings, LODGINS .OSSD at uwimona.edu.jm. It's important because that's where we will coordinate the pickup of the students at the airport and take them to the campus, to the respective halls. That service begins on the 18th of August and it carries all the way through to September 3. So if you're arriving during that period and you're a new student on the campus, you can make that arrangements to be picked up at no cost, no additional cost to you, and be taken to the hall. If you're arriving outside of that period, then we suggest that you would take one of the official JUTA taxis. So when you arrive at the arrival section, you could go to the dispatcher and be placed on a taxi to be taken to the Mona campus.
Okay, excellent. And that would come at their cost, or?
Right. So when you are arriving outside of the official period, your commute from the airport to the campus would be your cost. Once you're arriving during the period that we are providing the campus shuttle, then there is no cost to the student. I see an error I saw a message. I'm going to type in a minute the email address for the OSSD. I think I saw an error in it.
Sure, no problem.
Right.
Right.
So
go ahead.
You could go ahead with your next question. Sorry.
Right, no problem. So are there any additional measures or things that we do to support newly arriving regional and international students when they're moving in on hall?
Oh, yes. The halls of residence foster a family living environment. And so we plan an orientation period for our students. So from the moment you arrive at the airport, we have our trained orientation facilitators who are our students who will meet our arriving new students, will basically chaperone them to the halls of residence, and will help to show our students around not just the hall, but the campus in general, navigating the campus space, knowing where to access various services. I'm sure they will want to be visiting the International Student Office. And so our students provide that kind of support. There are some students who may want to do some shopping for certain items that they will need in terms of surviving on campus, pots and pans, whatever they may need for their room that they were not able to travel with. So we tend to help to facilitate that. And also there will be, beginning next week, direct communication between the applicants and the halls of residence, because our fees are now settled. So we will be writing formally, and some of them might have received an initial email already confirming that they've gotten space, but the official letter will come, and I know some of them will need that in terms of processing, their papers for immigration and whatnot. So that is to come next week. And also, I should add that if at all there is any question that our students have as it relates to halls of residence and living on campus, that student housing email address, they should use it. It's monitored from my office, and we tend to answer the students and provide whatever tips that they may need or any uncertainty that they have in terms of their living on campus.
Excellent, excellent. Are there any specific guidelines that students need to observe before moving in?
Great question. Yes, the halls of residence, like everywhere else, have rules and regulations for our students. There is what is called our hall license agreement, which is, we loosely call it our room contract, but it is a legal document that sets out the terms and conditions and the fees that are to be paid by the residents in each hall. That document will form part of the package that is emailed to the student. So when you get your offer letter and you accept the offer of accommodation, you are then sent additional paperwork, which include the hall license agreement and the hall charter that basically sets out how students are expected to conduct themselves within a hall of residence, your rights and the responsibilities that you have. And I like to talk about rights and responsibilities because those two things go hand in hand. You're gonna be living in a communal space. You have rights as students and as individuals, but you have corresponding responsibilities. And there are some persons who may have flatmates or roommates. Those documents basically set the tone, and the students can be aware ahead of time as to the kind of spirit that we want as well. Security, it will talk about the responsibilities that students have in terms of their own personal safety and security on campus. One of the problems we have, and I must mention it, is that students will tend to leave their door, the door is not locked, and they are just running off to KFC to get a snack or something. Something goes missing. Students have a responsibility to lock your room at all times while you are not there. So that's just an example of some of the things that we set out in those documents.
Okay, indeed, very important. So you touched on it a little a while ago, but say I'm a student and I've applied for a double occupancy room. So I have a roommate. Can I choose who I live with, or can I swap or change room assignments later on?
It is possible to choose your roommate, but if you are going to ask to room with person X, then you need to know that person X has also been offered accommodation in the same hall. And I suggest once you get your acceptance letter, you would write immediately to your hall manager to say, I would like to room with John Brown, who has also been accepted for Taylor Hall. Of course, given that that particular hall has double room, because not all of our halls provide double rooms. So if you're going to be living in, say, Rex Nettleford Hall, for instance, that facility is 800 single rooms. The student may not know that. And so it's important to know that fact or to ask. But to answer your question, yes. If when you arrive and you are put on a particular floor and you think you want to be on a ground floor or you want to be on the upper floor, those little nuances can be communicated directly with your hall manager, or your resident advisor, once you are here, will be in contact with you. You can make those requests. It's not always possible to facilitate a request like that, but we try as much as possible to ensure that our students are comfortable. And so we are able to respond to those things on the ground.
Excellent. That's fair. That's fair. Of course, we all know that accommodation comes at a cost. Where can students find information on all the costs associated with living on hall?
All right, that as well is on the UWI page under the housing and accommodation section. I must hasten to add, though, that our fees for the new academic year were only approved earlier this week. And I am not 100% sure if they are up now, but you will still see what the old fee is for the 2022-2023 fees. I'm sure that the new fees will be up in a matter of days if it is not already up. And I implore our students to look at what the cost of the hall that you are choosing is before you make that decision. Oftentimes, students decide to select a particular hall because they have friends or they have mates who are already living in that hall. And maybe it is the budget of your parents or whomever is funding your program is at another level. And so you should think about carefully the cost of the accommodation before you actually decide on the hall of residence.
Very true. Thank you. So when are students expected to pay for accommodation? Like, when does that come?
Great question. The policy of our university is that the fees are payable in advance. So ideally, the students are to pay prior to arriving in hall. For students arriving early, you will be allowed, especially our regional and international students, because sometimes they have challenges making the payments online in their home country. So there is a special provision that we make for our regional and international students to come in. We admit them, they get settled. One of the things that they will do very quickly is maybe open local bank accounts. There are banking options available on the campus. And once you open your bank account and maybe your parents wire funds to the account and so on, you will be allowed a few days to pay your hall fees. And I'm speaking now for the UWI owned and operated halls. Remember, I mentioned at the top of this discussion that we have some private halls. They may have different payment arrangements in terms of whether or not you will be admitted. And I would suggest if you're going to a 138 student living managed facility that you read carefully online. They have a lot of information online. You read carefully what the payment policy is for them, because it may be different from the UWI owned halls.
Right, indeed. That's very key for students to note. And they can look up for the updated fee schedule soon. So I hope it doesn't happen, but what if a student is late in paying for accommodation? What are some of the consequences?
All right, so we hope we don't have delinquency. Students, there is a policy as it relates to your payment. If you're having a challenge, and let us say the money from your source of funding is gonna be late, you need to escalate that immediately to your hall manager, who will know that the money is going to be a week late, 2 weeks late, and then the appropriate arrangements administratively can be made. Certainly, we wouldn't want payments to be later than a week or two. We don't want it to be late at all, but communication is very important, and so that we are able to manage those situations before they become chronic.
Right, certainly. Are there any other costs associated with accommodation that's outside of the rental fee that students would need to budget for? For example, are there any charges for things like laundry, internet or other utilities?
Right, excellent question. Yes, so each hall has laundry services available, and there is a fee per token. From the top of my head, I recall it's $150 per token to wash. You will need one token to wash and another token to dry. Again, the rates in the privately run hall for laundry services will be a little higher than for the UWI owned halls. So yes, there is a charge for laundry, and you pay for that as is required. So when you want to wash, you purchase your tokens and you wash. Internet, no, there is no additional charge that is covered in the fee that you pay for the accommodation for the year. And there are other services or common spaces that students can use. It varies from hall to hall. So so in my hall, for instance, there is a study room. We have small rooms that students can book to have like a group discussion, or if you're doing an assignment and there's going to be half a dozen of you working on the particular assignment, you could book rooms. So those services are also available. Some halls do have small convenience stores, mini-marts, if you like, that you could purchase snacks, or if you run out of items and you don't want to run to Ligani, you could get stuff. There are also eating places available, closely associated or closely situated to halls of residence. And in some instances, in some halls, there are eating places on campus. So yeah.
Right, fantastic. So all right, students will be coming, and I know they want to know what they need to pack and so on. So what essential items are provided, and what do students need to buy or bring with them when they come?
Right. So students are moving to a furnished room. So you do not need to bring any furniture items, furnished room, and there are appliances in the common areas that students will have access to use. What you need to bring is your own personal items, obviously your clothes, whatever personal items that you need. You will need to bring your own linen for the beds, and I can tell you the bed size, it's a twin bed. So when you are acquiring or purchasing your sheets and linen, it's twin bed. Whatever medication that you need to travel with, you make sure that you have that. Comfortable footwear. It's a vast campus, and you may be walking across campus, depending on where you're going, 10, 15 minutes. So have comfortable footwear, sneakers, and any other item that you will need. I have a list that I send to students coming to my hall as suggested things that you may need. It's just for a guide. You know better than us the things that you will need to make your life comfortable on the campus. And I would say bring those. What you cannot bring is your pet. There's a no pet in hall policy. We do not allow for you to have a hot plate, because that has implications for the electrical situation. We provide stoves and ovens for you in the kitchenettes for you to cook. And depending on the halls, well, for the 138, the private halls will have a small refrigerator in each room. There are other halls that will approve a student bringing in a small refrigerator, but you must get permission from your hall manager before you make those arrangements. And you're traveling from overseas. If you're going to purchase a refrigerator, obviously it would be while you're in Jamaica. Pots and pans, I would suggest that you purchase those things when you are actually in Jamaica, because you don't want to be traveling with too many things that you could acquire here.
Certainly. You mentioned it a little earlier that there is accommodation for graduate students, but are there accommodation for students with families?
Unfortunately, no. We are not yet at the point where we have family housing, but our partners at 138 Student Living do actually have short-term stay. So, and I know this is very important. If a family member is traveling with you to get you settled during the orientation period, they could book and stay at the 138 Student Living short-term residence. The hall you are going to will not accommodate you and your parent or parents, but they could stay at 138 in the short-term arrangement. And it's on campus as well, so they will still be able to support you physically during that critical transition period prior to the start of classes.
Right. You mentioned parents, and we know that there's some parents who have joined this webinar. And of course, safety is always a big concern for both students and parents. So could you give us a little bit of information about the security and safety measures that are in place on the halls and the surrounding area?
Right. So very quickly, there are 3 levels of security personnel on the campus. There's the Jamaica Constabulary Force that has a police post on campus. There is the campus police services. Those are actually employed to the university, but they do have the powers of arrest on the campus. And then we have our private security provider that provides security guards across the length and breadth of the campus. And halls of residence have security guards stationed 24 hours per day at entry points and exit points to the hall and to some buildings. What I will say to our students is that your safety and security you should see it as your own responsibility, and not to assume that everything is because there are physical guards on campus that you do not have to take precautions. You must. It is also a requirement of the campus that students wear their student ID cards at all times. This is how the security will be able to know that you're a resident of the hall and to be able to match the information on your ID card with the list provided to them at the entry points to the halls. There is also a campus security shuttle available at campus after certain hours at night. So a student could basically request the shuttle if they're moving from one hall to another hall that is a fair distance away. They could request that service as well. So those quickly are the 3 levels of security on campus. But the ones that our students will interact with most would be the private security guards that are stationed at various locations and at entry points to the halls of residence. And I plead with you to cooperate with our security personnel. You are required to provide your ID cards when requested by the guard. It is for your own safety.
Right, indeed. And we'll have more safety information for you in future webinar sessions, but that is definitely very key. Now, of course, from that perspective, we'd like to find out some more about the rules and regulations regarding guests and the quiet hours and communal spaces. We imagine that students will be making friends and so on, but what are the specific rules and regulations around, guests visiting students?
Right. So halls of residence do have visiting hours, believe it or not. Yes, we know you're adults, but the visiting hours, and it's quite wild. It's from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. So if the visitor arrives at 7 a.m. in the morning, they would not be admitted to the hall. And you could get your visitors up to 1 a.m. at night. There are responsibilities that go along with that. So a visitor must be logged and signed in at the entry point to the hall. So if I'm visiting you, Mr. Dunn, you would be required, when I arrive at the hall, you would be required to come to the front of the hall as a resident and to admit your guest and be logged so that we know who the person is visiting. And it is the responsibility of the resident to make sure that the visitor abides by the rules and regulations within the hall, right? So if your visitor comes in and breaks the rules and becomes a nuisance to another student, then you could be liable. All of this is clearly documented in the two things that I said will be sent to students prior to their arrival. It is in your room, your hall license agreement, and it is also in the hall charter, setting out the standards and principles expected of our residents. So broadly, that's the arrangement with visitors, that you are required to log your visitor. And if you are not present in the hall at the time when your visitor arrives, the visitor will not be granted access, you see, because you have to be there to admit the person and to escort them to wherever you are going. Right,
Indeed. And I presume no overnight stays for visitors as well.
Not in the UWI run halls. I think in the public-private halls 138, they have a special arrangement for overnight stay.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yes.
So I know students may have a few lingering questions. I'm not sure if we have any questions in the chat. So I'll hand over to Vikisha to proceed with any of those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. I'm actually seeing that most of the questions that were posed by the students were actually answered by Mr. Hamilton, but I would just want him to elaborate on the parents' day, because a few persons wanted to know how long could their parents stay when they come for the orientation.
Okay, so once they have been accommodated at the 138 facility, they could stay as long as they want to stay in that facility. If they want to stay for the 2 weeks, they can. I also should add that you are not, the parents and family coming for support are not obliged, by the way, to stay at 138. You could stay off campus. You could book a hotel wherever in Kingston and stay. I'm just mentioning that because it is more convenient because you are physically on the campus. So that is entirely up to the parent how long they would want to stay.
Excellent. See a hand. I think it's Esther James. You have a question? Hello, Esther James. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, I was not hearing. My apologies.
No
Yes.
problem.
So I have two questions. My father is travel. First of all, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and my father is traveling with me. We are supposed to leave on the 19th of August, and we would only be arriving until the 21st, right? I mean the 20th. Sorry. My question is, I would have sent an email to 138 housing, I believe the email, and they said to me they only accommodate persons for 3 nights as a short term. Now, the only available flight to return will be on the 25th of August, and that is more than 3 nights. So, what happens in that case?
All right, so I'm not sure who you spoke with. I'm going to drop my email address in the chat. And you could send me a quick email and I will follow up on that particular case on your behalf with 138. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat now. It's athol.hamilton03@UWI.
Thank you so much. My other question, how long does it take for you all to respond to us as students to know whether we would have gotten accepted to stay on hold? Because I would have sent several applications and no response.
All right, we should reply once we start processing the application, and that has started already. Within 2 weeks, I would imagine. However, at the start of this seminar, I had indicated that if you have not heard from the hall for whatever reason, you can send an email to student housing about your particular case, and we will follow up with the hall and let you know what's going on. So for any student who has not heard back from the hall, you've submitted an application, and if you submit today, you're not going to hear back tomorrow. But if 2 weeks have elapsed and you haven't heard anything, then you can send us an email at student housing to follow up on individual cases.
Right. So thank you.
So I just got my own email in the chat, so persons could follow up.
Right. Indeed.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, I have one other question before you go
certainly.
move on. In terms of gym, do you pay a fee to use the gym monthly, or is that the fees included into our tuition and whatever else? Or do you pay a gym fee every month?
That's a good one. I will need to double check on that. I know there's a facility at the Students' Union, and I think it is covered in your guild fees, but I would want to verify before I confirm that.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton, I can actually speak on that part.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, so for the gym access, your miscellaneous fees actually covers you up until the end of each semester. Outside of the semester, which would normally be like for summer, then you would need to pay for that. But you are actually covered for the 2 semesters that you would be here.
Excellent. Thank you. I see a few more hands. I think Ariane.
Hello, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
I was wondering, how would a parent go about applying to the 138 housing? Would you have to call or email?
Yes, email. The email address is info@138studentliving.com.
Thank you. And my second question, what would be the price range for the housing for a parent? For a parent, what's the price range for the housing?
Oh, I only have the rates for students. 138 Student Living will have to tell you what the short-term residency is, because they also have a range for short-term as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
You're
excellent.
welcome.
And I see Michelia.
Hi, good day. I was wondering, let's say a student gets a really bad luck. They don't have any offers to a room or living situation on campus. Is there any facilities or any way the campus or UWI as a whole can provide some support for the student in terms of helping them find off-campus living that's close and maybe in their price range, so that they'll be able to afford rent, especially for those of us who don't have family in Jamaica?
Very good question. The Lodgings Office provides that kind of support. It puts students with potential landlords in the vicinity of the campus. Because we have increased over the last 7 years or so, the number of rooms on campus, the demand for that or the need for that, especially as it relates to our regional and international students, is not very great. I think in almost all of the cases, if a regional or international student wishes to live on campus, we are able to provide them an option on the campus. But if for whatever reason you prefer to be off campus or that student did not get a room on campus, the Lodgings Office will assist in helping you to find a reasonable place off campus.
Right. Excellent. I don't see any further questions. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for joining us. I think this was very clear and very, very informative. So thank you again for joining, and thanks for your support.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing everyone. And if there is any follow-up questions, you could send whether to student housing or to my email address. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Right. So for the next segment, we'll look at the important matter of immigration. Now, unfortunately, our presenter is unavoidably absent. So what I'll do, I'll share a video from last year's presentation, which was delivered by Ms. Hermin Terrell, who is the Senior Administrative Assistant within the International Office. Just give me a quick moment just to queue up the video.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Hello again, everyone. It's indeed an exciting time for all of you. All of you that are on today received an offer of entry to study at the UWI Mona campus. Congratulations on your acceptance to the UWI. Ranked #1 in the Caribbean and ranked among the best universities in the world. As you make your preparations for traveling to Jamaica, here are a few important matters that should be taken into consideration. There are a few items that you will need to begin your preparation. You will need your passport, your UWI acceptance letter, so whether you're accepted as an undergrad or a graduate student, and there will be those students who will need a student visa prior to coming to Jamaica. Your passport. Please check your passport to ensure that it is valid for the duration of your program. Note the expiration date because you might need to renew your passport before you complete your program. Check with your local passport office before you leave your home country in the event that your passport will expire before the end date of your program. Note the process for renewal of your passport before leaving your home country. Chances are you will not be able to renew your passport in Jamaica. So please ensure that you check this information. Your acceptance letter. Please have your acceptance letter ready for presentation to the Jamaican Immigration Office upon arrival, the Jamaican Immigration Officer at the port of entry. It's advisable that you print out your acceptance letter and have that in your carry-on luggage. Entry visa. Students from Commonwealth country, that is our Caribbean students, do not require an entry visa. Please ensure that you travel on a passport that was issued by a Commonwealth country to satisfy this requirement. Now, once you have your passport, whether it's from Barbados or from Trinidad and Tobago or from the Bahamas, one of our CARICOM countries, you are or a Commonwealth country, you do not need an entry visa. However, students traveling from outside of CARICOM or from a non-Commonwealth country who need a visa to enter Jamaica must contact the nearest Jamaican embassy or high commission or consul to find out how you go about applying for an entry visa. The visa issued by the mission acts as a landing permit. Now, obtaining the entry visa will facilitate you smooth entry. If you come without that visa, you will be charged at the port of entry. So it's very important that you check the list of overseas mission, the Jamaican overseas mission. This will be posted in the chat where you can check to find out how you go about applying for an entry visa if you are from a non-Commonwealth country. The extension of stay. All non-Jamaican students admitted to the University of the West Indies Mona campus are required to acquire an extension of stay visa. This extension of stay will be done after you are registered. You must be registered at the University of the West Indies to do this. This extension of stay is considered your student visa and must be obtained by the end date stamped in your travel document on your arrival on the island. Please note that the date on the stamp that is placed in your passport at the port of entry only qualifies you to be on the island as a visitor, and you are expected to obtain student status by acquiring the extension of stay. Now, you were given an immigration fact sheet in your portal, and I ask that you pay particular attention to this. You go back on your portal and go through the immigration fact sheet. The Admissions and International Office, through an arrangement with the Jamaican Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, known as PICA, will facilitate the processing of the extension of stay visa on campus. If you miss the period of facilitation for the extension of stay offered by the Admissions and International Office, you will be required to go into the PICA office on your own to conduct the processing of the extension of stay. The extension of stay process is normally done on campus in October for semester 1 and in February for semester 2. Further details about this process will be communicated via email to all our non-Jamaican students. Require an extension of before the timeframes indicated, you will also be required to visit the PICA office, that's a Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency office in Jamaica, on your own. So students, it's very important that you pay attention to this information because there are some penalties, some heavy fines that will be imposed by the government of Jamaica should you not adhere to this requirement. Your landing stamp. Now, I just spoke about the stamp that will be placed in your passport at the port of entry. Please look at the landed until date, which was indicated in your passport by the Jamaican immigration officer. The extension must be done before this date expires. I'll say that again for emphasis. The extension of stay must be done before this date expires. So that landed until date that will be stamped in your passport at the port of entry, the extension of stay must be done before that date expires. Your passport data page. Now, the extension will be granted for your period of studies. Now, if you're coming for 3 years, 4 years, we have some persons who will be here for a semester, the extension will be granted for that period. However, if your passport expires before your program ends, the extension will be granted up to the validity date of your passport. Now, they're not going to give you a visa in a passport for 3 years if your passport expires within a year. So please pay attention to this requirement, because you will need to renew your passport, and when you renew your passport, then you will have to transfer the extension of stay stamp from your old passport to your new passport. The extension of stay stamp is an authorization granted by the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency of Jamaica and allows the recipient to stay for a specified period of time, which typically extends beyond the regular time granted to visitors. Now, for the Jamaican immigration, if you're coming as a visitor, the regulations are different from if you're coming as a student. And we want to make this very clear to students, because some students, they are not truthful to the immigration officer when they're coming in. They come and then they might leave at a later date, and then they want to come back into the island. At that point, you will be harassed by our immigration officers, because they're going to ask you why you did not do the extension of stay. So students, it's very important that you adhere to this requirement. Now, the extension of stay processing fee is $10,000, and this is the basic fee for the extension of stay. In addition to the basic fee for the extension of stay, students from non-Commonwealth countries are also required to get a multiple entry visa fee. Now, this multiple entry visa will be issued to students from non-Commonwealth countries only. Now, we have listed some of these countries here, and we should also point out that students from Nigeria, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, British Virgin Islands, and the Cayman Islands will also be required to do this multiple entry visa. So their fee would be on the others, which would be 500 Jamaican dollars. In addition to this fee, there's also an alien registration fee. All non-Commonwealth nationals who will be residing in Jamaica for excess of 6 months will also be required to pay an additional amount of $2,000 for an alien registration. And this alien registration will require you to submit 2 passport size pictures. Now, it's advisable that you have this information ahead of time, so that should you need to take these passport pictures with you prior to coming to Jamaica. All right, so please be aware. And this, the alien registration, is applicable to students from non-Commonwealth countries who will be in Jamaica for more than 6 months. Penalty for being out of status. Now, a fine will be imposed on persons who have overstayed and wish to regularize their status in the island. Now, this simply means, I told you about your landed until date. That will be on your landing stamp that is issued at the port of entry. Now, let's say you can be landed for anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. Now, let's say you were landed for 3 months, and at the end of that period, you did not do the extension of stay. When you go into the passport and immigration office, you would be charged a fine. And this fine is 50,000 Jamaican dollars. And this will be in addition to the other charges for the extension of stay. Bear in mind, students, that this is a government of Jamaica charge. This has nothing to do with the University of the West Indies. And we tell students to be mindful of this because the UWI cannot ask for this fee to be waived. So we ensure that our students are fully aware of these requirements. And please be reminded that the immigration fact sheet that was placed in your portals has this information. So please, after this session, I encourage you to take a look again at your immigration fact sheet. Purchasing an airline ticket. Students, you need to purchase a round ticket to come to Jamaica, because when you are landed at the port of entry, the immigration officer will need to see that you are going to leave. As a matter of fact, I think it's from when you're checking in, you have to show your return ticket. So please be mindful of this if you need to check with a travel agency, because a round ticket is an open ticket, and I think it can only be valid for 1 year. So please check on this information. So you consult with your travel agent for further details. COVID-19 test. Jamaica no longer have any travel restrictions that were imposed due to the pandemic, as travelers to the island are no longer required to take a COVID-19 test to board a flight. That is the current situation. Prior to arrival, please check with the Jamaican Ministry of Health and Wellness website for further updates. You are advised to keep checking this information. There might be other requirements that might be applied to traveling. So please ensure that you are fully up to date on what are the requirements for traveling to Jamaica, especially as it relates to the COVID-19 test or any other test requirements. Now, I thank you for listening today. I hope that you found the information informative, and should you need further assistance, or if you have any questions, please pose them in the chat and we will get back to them. Thank you very much.
All right. So we thank Ms. Terrell for her presentation. I think it was very informative. Of course, we would have shared the immigration fact sheet with you via email. So hopefully you've received it. And if you haven't, then please check that initial welcome email that we would have sent some weeks ago, because it should be contained there. But if you haven't received it and don't see it there, feel free to, of course, reach out to us and we'll send it to you, because those immigration rules and regulations are critically important. So I imagine that there are some questions related to the immigration process. I see already a hand, so I'll just hand over to
All right. There are a few questions that were posed. So let me just clarify a few of them. Once you're coming to Jamaica, you cannot travel on a one-way ticket. It has to be a round-trip ticket. Repeating again, you cannot travel on a one-way ticket. It has to be on a round-trip ticket. The extension of stay happens after you have arrived on the island. So when you are when you come to the airport, your passport is going to be stamped with a date. And so you will see the maximum time that you will get in that passport is 3 months. That is the maximum time that you will get. So the stamp in your passport is at the discretion of the immigration officer. And so some persons will get 2 weeks, some persons will get a month, and so on. Your program, however long your program lasts, you must be legal in the country. So if you are students coming for just 1 semester and you got 2 weeks in your passport, you need to do the extension of stay to carry you over for the entire semester. I hope that part is cleared.
Yeah, very clear,
There was,
Vikisha. I'll just share quickly the slide with the actual landed until stamp. I think it's very key because there's sometimes some confusion about which date because there's two dates there. So let me just share my screen again.
okay,
See two dates there. You'll see one written at the top, that's landed until, and then you'll see the other, which is printed and stamped, which is actually the date of your arrival. So the date that you need to get your extension of stay before would be the date at the top that's written. So it's very, very key that you pay special attention to that. So no matter how long they give you, you proceed to get your extension of stay before that. As was mentioned in the presentation, we typically support students in acquiring their extension of stay. So you would surrender your passport to us. We'll have you sign some forms. Of course, there's a charge for this service. Of course, there's a charge for the extension of stay, which was outlined. And we would take your passports to PICA to be processed, right? So we'll be sharing more information about that closer to the time. We anticipate this year will be likely be later September or around early October. But we'll give you information about that ahead of time. But don't wait on us if you get a date that is before that. As Vikisha has rightly said, you need to go to the PICA office as soon as possible. Back to you, Vikisha.
yes. So basically, you have to be legal in the country, and the extension of stay will provide you with that. We will guide you in the office. Once you have, we will also send out form when we start the process to let you know that we have started the process and what are the requirements. And so when you send us a copy of your passport, because you, as Mr. Terrell had explained, your passport need to be valid until the time of your stay. So if you're going to stay for 2 semesters and your passport will expire in a few months, it is best that you get that passport up to date before you come to Jamaica.
Indeed.
Okay.
I see a hand from Esther James. Esther, you
Hi,
can.
yes, sir. Yes. So the question I was asking was going to ask, sorry, the extension of stay. Two things. Do we do that when we come in through immigration, or we do that after we are on campus and we go and we tell them we are requesting an extension of stay, and your parents do not have to do that, right? It's only the students.
Right, that's correct. So you would do the extension of stay after you have arrived. So it wouldn't be something you do at the airport upon arrival. What they will do, they will take your passport and they will stamp in it the landed until date, and they will write the dates by which you would be expected to leave. Now, what you would do or what you'd be applying for is to extend your stay as a student here. And so that is something that you would apply for usually within about 2 weeks to a month or so after you've arrived. They usually, as Vikisha said, they usually give you a grace period of about 2 to 3 months, but it does vary quite a bit. So it's very important for you to make sure that you take stock of the date that is actually written in your passport by the immigration officers. All right, I'm seeing several other hands pop up, but did we answer your question, Esther? Was that clear?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we see Sharai.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I was wondering, since I have a parent who's a Jamaican, do I still need to apply for the extension of stay if I'm going to apply for citizenship?
Do you have a Jamaican passport?
I have a Jamaican passport, but it is expired, and I'm trying to find my naturalization card.
Okay, so you would need to have a valid Jamaican passport to be exempt, even though your parent is a Jamaican.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can check with the PICA office around the specific regulations related to that, because in effect, you're a Jamaican citizen.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. So we see Tyrese.
Yes, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Tyrese. You have a question for us? Sorry, we're not hearing you, Tyrese.
Are you hearing me better now?
Yes, hearing you better.
All right, so Miss Allen stated that we have to buy a round trip ticket, right? I am an international student and I will not be returning home until the summer vacation. My question is, does the returning date matter, or will the extension of stay kind of negate that for me?
Right, Vikisha?
To some extent, the date does not matter. They just need to, you just need to show that you have intention to go back home. So when you book your return ticket, it is indicating that you're here for a specific time, not to say that that is the time that you're going to leave. There may be penalties by the airlines or whoever you book your ticket with for you to change that date, but the immigration just need to know that you have plans to return home.
Right. So you'll be looking at an open ticket, and potentially you need to see about negotiating that timeline.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And
You're welcome.
Michelle, yeah?
Hi, this is a bit off base, but for international students, as soon as we arrive in Jamaica and at UWI, what do you know the deadline to pay tuition fees, or what would be the best timeline to pay your tuition fees, or maybe we should pay before we arrive? Do you by chance know the deadline for the payment of tuition and fees?
Okay, Michelle, yeah, you will receive a notification of your payment deadlines as soon as they start, as soon as one is updated for the current academic year. We don't know what the deadlines are at this moment, but you will be given that fact sheet.
And we have a session coming up that deals with your budgeting, banking, and your financial obligations. And so information on that will be shared at that time. And so, you can look out for that webinar when it comes up in a few weeks and join to pose that question again, because we'll have representatives who will be able to share additional information on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So I see Kamika or Kimika.
Yes, I wanted to find out if you can do the first semester online and the second semester, the first semester in person and the second semester online. Is that possible?
Right. Vikisha, any thoughts there? Did you hear the question?
No, I did not hear the question, sorry.
Right, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it possible to do your first semester in person and the second semester online?
Right, she's asking if it's possible to do the first semester online and the second semester in person, or is it the other way? First semester in person and the second semester.
Okay, so based on my knowledge, this is a face-to-face institution. There are programs that have components online. Each faculty are guided accordingly, so you would have to speak with your faculty on that. We in this office, we do not make decisions on that, but the faculty will guide you. There are some programs there are some parts of it that are online and others are face-to-face, but it is a face-to-face run institution.
Right. Were there any other questions in the chat? I know we're mindful of the time as well. If we're unable to get to your question, we will, of course, be following up and we'll share responses with you as soon as we are able. So, right. All right. So thank you, Vikisha, and thank you, students, for your questions on immigration. For our final segment, we invite Abraham Alexander, who is a current undergraduate student from Barbados, who is in the final semester of his final year studying here within the Faculty of Humanities and Education. So who better to speak to you than someone who has firsthand experience and who knows, what can and will happen during this period of your journey. So we invite him to share just a little bit of his experience about studying in Jamaica, what it's like to go through the immigration processes that we've just described, what it is like living on hall, if there are any tips that he thinks will help new students to take the next step in their journey. So Abraham, over to you.
Good afternoon, Miss everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. Dunn. And thank you to the ASO for inviting me to share with you. It's actually pretty fitting because this is my last day at UWI, as in finishing my studies as an intern. And so this is my last semester. So, and as you new students entering for your first semester. So once again, good afternoon. I have a short presentation that I will share on screen. I will turn off my camera during the presentation due to internet issues. So we're just going to get started. All right, so as I said earlier, today I'm going to be sharing about my experience here at UWI. And as Mr. Dunn mentioned, my name is Abraham Alexander, and I am a final year student at UWI Mona studying geography, and I'm from the island of Barbados. So today I'll be sharing my experience as well as some tips on preparing to come to UWI, and how you can maximize this period now, how you can maximize your time now. There's a saying that says, if you fail to prepare, well, things might go wrong. So you have time, you can maximize this time in order to get ready for your time in Jamaica, and so that you can be off to a great start. By the end of this presentation, I am hoping that everything I share with you, as well as everything that was shared before, will help you to be better prepared in coming to Jamaica. So without further ado, I will continue. So first of all, we've heard it already, and I'm going to say again, congratulations on being accepted to the University of the West Indies. It is a great institution. I've been here for the past 3 years, and I just want to encourage you to make the best of your journey. Make the best of it. So once again, congratulations and welcome to the UWI family. So first of all, I'm going to talk about my immigration experience. And in my opinion, it was very easy. It was seamless for me. Now, firstly, I know we would have mentioned this earlier, but I have personal experience from everything that was mentioned earlier. So passport validity or having a valid passport is actually very important. A lot of times we hear people book trips, they go to the airport and they realize, oh, my passport is not valid, it's going to expire. And actually before coming to Jamaica, I realized that my passport was going to expire within a year or so. So I had to go and I had to actually do the whole process of renewing my passport before I leave my home country for Jamaica. So it's important, if you haven't done it, check to make sure that your passport is valid. I actually had a friend who, and this is important for the extension of stay, I had a friend who, he went all the way down to Pica, waited in line, paid, and then realized when he got to the counter, his passport would have expired soon. So that was kind of a waste of time and money. So please ensure that your passport is valid because it is very important. So as mentioned earlier, your acceptance letter, when I arrived in Jamaica, this was one of the first things the immigration officer asked me for. I printed mine and I brought it to the airport with me. So as mentioned by Ms. Terrell earlier, that is also a very important aspect. Now, the extension of stay, as you would have heard earlier in the presentation, is very important. And we don't kind of want to play with immigration issues. So when I arrived in Jamaica, I arrived in the middle of the pandemic, outside of the period where you would have been able to take your documentation to UWI to be able for them to take it to Pica to process it. So I had to go all the way to Pica in order to get my extension of stay. And what I did is, because it was outside of the period, I pulled up with a bunch of my friends and we decided, let's go together at the same time. Now this proved to be much cheaper, a little better. We went in all at the same time and we were able to get dates to collect our passports all on the same day. So we went twice, all at the same time. So if you have friends from in classes, international student friends who on hall that you're living with and you want to pull together, say, let's go get our extension of stay together at the same time, I would advise to do that because it worked well for me. And as I mentioned earlier, just pay attention to that date in your passport. So my next pointer is about finances. And I know this might be a touchy topic for some and even difficult for others, but it's very important because when you're traveling to another country, you need to ensure that you have all the financial resources to survive. So I'm gonna share a few tips that help me and help some of my friends. So firstly, contact your bank before you travel, especially if you have a credit or debit card. Now, some people don't do it, but I actually ran into a problem last week where I had an issue with my bank card. And when I called my bank, they didn't know that I was out of the island. And it complicated a lot of the issues in order for me to be able to use my bank card again. Luckily and thankfully, I got the issue resolved. However, I learned my lesson from there to, let your bank know that you're traveling so that if anything arises, that there can be a solution that can be found a little easier. The next thing is credit or debit card versus opening a local bank. Now, many of the students that I know, regional students, have opted for the option of using a credit or debit card from a bank or from their accounts back home. This is possible, or you could open a local bank. There are two banks that I know of on campus. So there's Scotiabank and there's NCB. So you can possibly open a bank account. There you can go in, ask questions and see. I am not personally sure what the requirements are, but you can check and see. However, personally, I have used the debit card option for me because I know that I won't be staying here. But for some people who decide that they do want to stay, they have opted to open a local bank account. So both options can work. And the next one is budgeting. I know earlier we would have mentioned about budgeting for your hall fees, but outside of your hall fees, just before you leave, just take a look at what your expenses may be, what your projected expenses may be, and draft up a budget. It might not be entirely comprehensive or entirely accurate. It may need to change or tweak, but the idea here is that you have a set goal in mind of what you want to spend or what you would need in order to travel and in order to live comfortably in basically your new home for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. So that's very important. So my next pointer, or what I'm going to talk about, is living on hall. So earlier you'd have heard about all of the different accommodations, applying applications. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just going to share a few pointers or my personal experience. And what I would say is to get involved. There are a lot of activities on each hall. Each hall has their own different hall culture and activities. Some may have a lot of sporting activities. A lot of the halls actually have sports days where you can go run for your hall, where you can go run for your block. There are other events, like some halls have performing arts events. I know Towers is famous for being into the arts kind of area. So get involved. Don't isolate yourself. I know sometimes some people tend to just stay in their room. get involved. There's also orientation activities. When I first came to UWI, it was in the middle of COVID. However, we still had a kind of a modified orientation. And through that orientation activity, I got to meet new people. I got to meet, first of all, I came to UWI not knowing a lot of people. So moving on hall, not knowing much people, the orientation activities really helped me to bond with other people that I would have been living with, or that I am living with now for about a year or so. So get involved, don't be shy, join activities, join groups, join committees, join clubs, because you make connections, and your connections can help you. Say, for example, a group wants to go to the supermarket, pull together, go to the supermarket, or go on a beach day out. You get to experience things, you get to do life easier when you get involved and you pull together with others. Another tip that I have is to get to know your resident advisors and your hall committee. For example, sometimes when you run into different trouble or you need advice, they are really there to help you and to guide you along your way. They're like your helpers. You're not in your usual home, so they're there to help you, to guide you along. I've leaned on my resident advisor so many times for advice on how to do certain things, and even just integrating into Jamaica, and he has helped me so much. And even with your hall committee, get to know them. Sometimes you might want to do a little activity on hall. For example, last semester, I started a little group on hall, and I wasn't sure how we would be able to meet, the spaces we would be able to use. But because I knew the hall committee, because I knew the members, I was able to get this little group started up, and we were able to, do bonding activities. So don't isolate yourself. Get to know the people you're living with on hall and get to know your hall committee. And as well, I'm going to go on my next point, is to join hall committees. So I'm going to get to that on my next slide. But so I'm going to talk about the hall that I lived on. Currently live on Leslie Robinson Hall. And the picture that I'm showing you here is the volleyball court, as well as the commissary in the back. So as mentioned earlier, halls have commissaries, mini marts. They're really easily accessible sometimes for a midnight snack, or you don't want to walk to Halo. So let me just go to the commissary. And there's spaces on each hall, as mentioned earlier. So here's the volleyball court. I know at night, there are volleyball games. There are many times where I have just come outside to sit on the steps with my friends and to just talk. So there's spaces for you to relax. I think for me personally, hall life has been a really great experience because it is a space where you're walking with people who are on the same journey with you, and you get to help each other on that journey, but also to use the spaces that you have to bond together. So volleyball, I know sometimes there are cricket games on Sunday evenings in the car park, or football on the pasture outside. As I said earlier, don't isolate yourself, get involved, talk to people, do different activities. This is a new experience. This is a new journey. Enjoy it to the fullest. So as I said, I live on Leslie Robinson Hall. This is a picture of the hall. And as I said, get involved in hall committees and activities. So when I first went on hall, I helped to organize the hall's cocktail. And it was actually a very memorable experience. And it took a lot of work, but there's skills that you build from these things. So I encourage you, get involved, get involved. If that's the only thing you remember from my presentation or my experience, is get involved. You meet new people, you learn new things, you learn about new cultures. Even from this cocktail experience, we did so many different dishes from so many different Caribbean islands that I didn't know existed. So you learn a lot of things and you meet a lot of new people, new friends. Again, I'll say, get involved. And then there's homecoming. I just added these pictures last year. Well, this year was my first homecoming because it regenerated after COVID. So yeah, so halls usually have participate, in the homecoming parade. So don't be afraid to as I said, get involved in these homecoming activities. They're usually preparations for them. And it's a really fun time, a really fun week at UWI. So please do not miss homecoming. All right. So I also want to let you know that we're in this together. You are not alone. So some things that you can do from now on. Join group chats, or joining group chats is a very important, it's a very important step. So there are faculty group chats, there are department group chats, and if you're not in them yet, don't worry, you will get them later. But in these group chats, you have mentors, mentees, department reps, guilds, people from the faculty or department guild committee that will be able to help you answer your questions. Sometimes you might be looking for a textbook and there it is in the group chat. You might have a question. I have actually mentored a few students who reached out in group chats for help, and I reached out to them and I said, okay, you need help with this, you need help with an approach to this course, sure, I can help. So join group chats, but also don't be afraid to message in them. I know sometimes group chats can be a bit overwhelming, but group chats can help you in this journey. As I said, you're not on this journey alone. Connect with your island association. And I know that we aren't all from islands. So some people from France, some people from other places. So even if you don't have an island association, connect with others from your country. But I'm going to backtrack to that island association. So I know currently this is the season where we're all preparing to come into university, and island associations usually have these fresher information sessions where they meet up and they basically share all of their knowledge with you on how they would have navigated life in Jamaica. I personally don't know what I would have done without that information session. So in addition to these webinars, you can connect with your island association, see if there's one, connect with them and see what group chats there are and what advice they can give you. I remember in the first meeting that I went to, I got so much information, especially on packing, like things that I thought would have been in Jamaica, but okay, probably pack your little green seasoning, or oh, Jamaica doesn't have this particular snack, so don't forget to bring it along. So these meetings are connecting with people from your country who have been there before and can help you, will be very beneficial to you in helping you to settle in. Because from the time you get to Jamaica, you might feel a little homesick, you might miss home, you might miss doing certain things you did at home, and you want to feel comfortable in Jamaica. You want to feel comfortable in your new home for the next how many years. So go to these sessions, talk to other people who've done it before, and get to know what you need to know from a local perspective. Another thing is connecting with others from your country, as I mentioned. So if there's someone from your high school, college that is traveling to Jamaica, has been there or will be going, possibly you can arrange to go on the same flight, or arrange when you get there to, okay, let's do a grocery shopping run together. Actually, my friends and I we pull together and go to the supermarket together. This helps. A lot of these things help, so that you're not doing life alone. You're connecting with others, and you're basically not doing it alone. You have help. You have others to basically go out with, to talk to. This is very beneficial, especially as a regional and international student. So I'm going to touch back on one thing, which is mentorship. So some island associations also have mentorship programs, but you also have faculty mentorship programs. As I said, there are people here that are willing to help you, to guide you on the way. So don't be afraid to reach out and to ask for help from others who have been there, did that, done that, and can guide you along the way. All right, so there's also the first year experience program as well. I participated in that, and it helps. It helps because they give you tips and tricks in every step of the way. So please don't be afraid to join these programs. So I have a few other tips, and I know this can seem overwhelming. I know it can seem very overwhelming, but you can make a checklist. When I came to UWI, I made a little checklist. I said, okay, I need to do A, B, C, D. Okay. And I tried to check everything along the way, write things down so that I didn't feel lost or overwhelmed. Another thing is to spend time with your friends and family. You're leaving your home for, say, a few months, 9 months, probably 4 months. You might be prone to homesickness. So as much as you can, try to spend time with your friends and family before you leave. As well as just enjoy your home. I know this isn't really mentioned a lot, but enjoy your home when it lasts. There's some days where even though I cook my food, Barbadian food on hall, there's some days where I just miss food from home. There's some days where I just miss going to certain places that I enjoyed going back home. So please, within the next month, 2 months, just enjoy your home country as much as you can. And even if you can travel with some things from your home country, say, for example, your flag, a particular snack, food stuff, pictures of family members, pictures of friends, do so because it will make you feel more at home. And yes, so that is all for me. I hope that my experience would have helped you, or basically my tips would have helped you in being better prepared and better planned for the journey ahead. So one of the key takeaways that I just want to reinforce is don't feel like you're doing this alone. If you need help, reach out to IS, the International Students Office, reach out to island associations or others who are possibly going on the same journey with you. Doing it with someone else can help a lot. And I've seen that in my experience and my journey. So thank you very much for listening. And I just want to wish you all of the best in your journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Abraham. Really comprehensive presentation. I know we may have a few questions that are on the floor, so I'll invite Keisha to just field those for us. Keisha?
Thanks, Mr. Dunn. Just going over the chat. Thanks, Abraham, for that wonderful presentation, as usual. All right, so someone was asking, how do they find the island associations?
Okay. So finding island associations, you can try on Instagram to find Instagram and social medias. I know a lot of the island associations are very active on their social media pages. So you can search for them there. I did serve on one of my island association committee for a while. So you can probably reach out to the UWI Mona Guild. There is a director of associations who should have a comprehensive list. I'm not sure where the ISO will come in here, but yes, finding island associations, those are my 2 tips.
Right, yeah. And we're looking to always strengthen our relationship with the island and territorial associations. So we'll do our best to collect the details and share that with you in coming correspondences. So thank you for that, Abraham. Abraham, I have a question for you. What would you say in your time at UWI was your overall just best experience?
I would say my best experience is getting to Expo Jamaica. Yes, going outside of Kingston, say going to Portland, visiting the waterfalls, visiting the beaches outside, going to Ocho Rios. Those are my best experience. And I'm going to share, as I said, get to know others because, for example, I've made a lot of friends in hall, and for sometimes we would actually once we all decided to just get a bus, share the cost. It was a lot of us. We shared the cost and we took a trip. There are also Island Association excursions as well as hall excursions. So I know the Barbados Student Association this last semester would have done a trip to Matafed River and as well as a beach on the north coast, just outside of Ocho Rios. So look out for those opportunities because Jamaica is really beautiful. It's a really nice place to explore, as well as other clubs. I know for me as a geography student, I know the Geographical Society, Youth Mappers, they do things outside of getting to outside of campus. So you get to explore different places. There's also Antigua and Barbuda Student Association. There's the Trinidad and Tobago Students Association, St. Kitts and Nevis Students Association. So you get to know your island association and join clubs because they can, they're activities that can help you to explore Jamaica. So, and I enjoyed exploring Jamaica.
Fantastic. Yeah, it seems like you had a very rich experience here, and I'm so glad to hear that you made the most of it. And I hope that the students here today will also have that opportunity as well. So thank you again very much, Abraham. Vikisha, do we have any more questions? At least for Abraham? No? Thank you very much, Abraham. Really do appreciate your intervention and your contribution. Right. I see there are a few other questions looking at things like registration and other things like that. We'll definitely be sharing that information with you in the coming weeks, so you can look out for that. As I said, many of the dates and so on are still to be determined. So once that information is available, we'll be sharing with you. But this brings us to the end of our webinar. So thank you all again for joining us. We encourage you to join us as well for the upcoming webinar, which is on Friday, July 14 at the same time. And this next webinar topic will look at budgeting, banking, and financial obligations. That's a very important topic. We know that there are some questions and concerns regarding payment of tuition and other fees. So those will be explored at that time. A recording of this session will be placed on YouTube for you to view. So you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel just so that you'll be kept up to date for any new uploads. I'd like to say a very special thank you to our presenters, Athal Hamilton, Herman Terrell, and Abraham Alexander for the excellent contributions that they have offered today. I'd also like to thank Vikisha Allen and the rest of the admissions and international office team for all their hard work and support. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and also for being a part and choosing UWI. We look forward to meeting you on Tuesday, August 22 for the regional and international student orientation session. Yes, there was a question as well about whether it will be available online. Now, to get the most out of the session, you really want to be there in person. But if it is that you're unable to join us in person, then yes, the session will be live streamed, so you can partake virtually as needed. Right. There's a registration form that was sent out as well. So I hope that you all have registered so that we know that you will be attending and will make the relevant provisions. So that was sent in an email several weeks ago. If you have not received that email, just double check your spam or promotional mailboxes to ensure that you have that. And if you still haven't gotten it, just reach out to us and we'll share the information with you. So again, after exiting, we have a very brief post-webinar survey. So just give us your feedback and let us know what you thought of this session. So thank you again very much and enjoy the rest of your day.